Well, earlier this week, Treasurer Josh Frydenberg called on over 60s to retrain and learn new skills to contribute to the economy. Ian Henschke from National Seniors Australia joins us now from our Adelaide studio. Ian, thanks for your time this morning, or this afternoon, I should say. What was your reaction to these comments?
Well, Charlotte, it's good to talk to you about this because I want to deal with the facts. One of the things that's come up, and there was an article in the Fin Review saying it was a shrill reaction from people about this, but I want to tell you the facts. We keep hearing that the pension is going to be this massive problem going into the future. The fact is the 2002 intergenerational report got it wrong. It said, and I'll quote you this, that the projected growth of the pension would be 4.6% of GDP by 2042. Well, guess what? It's actually going to be 2.5% of GDP, about half that figure, by 2038 in 20 years' time. Now, why? Why is that? Well, it's because the Abbott budget back in 2014 knocked about 100,000 people off the pension and changed the eligibility for the pension. So that's actually been factored into it already. The other thing, of course, is that Paul Keating, when he was Treasurer during the Hawke-Keating years, brought in compulsory superannuation, which is now growing and growing and growing, and should go to 12% and possibly even to 15%, because that's the projection that people are talking about. And then you will have half the people by the middle of this century being self-funded retirees. So to turn around and say that the pensioners are this drain, this burden on the community is what we reacted to. And I'm only dealing with facts. Everything I've told you is a fact.
Ian, another thing that the Treasurer said, he said, with Australians in work currently undertaking 80% of their training before the age of 21, this will have to change if we want to continue to see more Australians stay engaged in work for longer. Now, in a lot of older Australians, they believe that they're actually interested in staying in the workforce. A lot of them want to be employed, but they're really struggling to get employment. Do you think that that delivery by Josh Frydenberg was wrong?
Look, once again, this is unintentional. The things he's doing are unintentional. I think he should be better advised, particularly from Treasury, about that intergenerational report back in 2002. Michael Rice from Rice Warner, who was Actuary of the Year in 2018, wrote that report last year called The Pension in the 21st Century, and I'm quoting from that. So those figures that I'm telling you are correct. Let's look at the other facts. Older Australians are staying in the workforce more. They want to work more. But the problem that they've got at the moment is that they are being bounced out of jobs by state governments in particular, by federal governments as well, and they are being bounced out of jobs in industry between the ages of about 45 and 65, and now that we've raised the pension age to 67, we find that the group that suffers the most in terms of trying to get a job are the over 55s. They're on New Start, and many of them are not even on New Start because they may have a spouse or partner that's working. So there is a structural problem in this country with ageism, and that is what we were talking about. And the reason there was such a reaction back was because these people want to work, but they are not being given the opportunity because employers freely admit, and there was a survey done where they asked employers anonymously to actually say whether or not they're ageist. A third of them said they were. So that means that you've got a 1 in 3 chance of being not even getting to the baseline with employers. I mean, this is the real issue that should be faced up to. Now, the government can do a lot of things to address this, and we'll give you some positive options now. The first thing is, as people are in their 40s and 50s and 60s, employers could, for example, offer them 4-day weeks in their 50s or maybe 3-day weeks in their 60s. Rather than getting rid of them, offer them the alternative to work fewer hours. They would still be taxpayers. They would still be able to be contributors to the community. But they don't. They say, oh, we're going to have a targeted redundancy. We're going to have voluntary packages. I'm talking to you from South Australia. They're getting rid of 400 people in the health department at the moment. Before that, they got rid of people in the education department. They do it all the time. They do it in corporations like SA Water. You know, I mean, I sit here in South Australia and open the paper regularly. More redundancy packages for the over 50s. More redundancy packages for the over 50s. Yeah. The federal government can actually tell the states, we don't want you to do that because they've got the purse strings. You take these infrastructure projects that are coming at the moment. That's fantastic. How many engineers working there will be over the age of 50? The Engineering and Water Supply Department, which was now known as SA Water, got rid of dozens and dozens and dozens of engineers a few years ago, and it did that because they had these corporations come in and say, cut at the top, grow at the bottom. Now, if you do that structurally in the community, you create a massive number of older people who are unemployed, and some of them have got high skills. I had a phone call the other day from a person who had lost their job at 59, who has applied for 300 jobs since they lost their job. So Josh Frydenberg is right in that he wants to keep people working. Well, guess what? They want to keep working. He has to put policies in place that will address ageism. That's all we're saying.
Here on, actually on Sky News, Alan Jones earlier this week, he recommended that perhaps one of the things they could be doing to try and get those people that want to stay in the workforce is in creating some sort of an incentive of a payroll tax cut to those employers that do actually take on older Australians, which I thought was a pretty interesting point. But we'll move on to one other thing that I did want to talk about as well. We've got a graphic here of what you were talking about earlier, that the rate of people self-funding their retirement is increasing. But there has also been a lot of talk after those comments from Frydenberg, a bit of a fear, I guess, that the pension access age would increase. Do you think that's likely?
Well, let's just have a look at that graph there at the moment. Now, this is really interesting because we're looking at the number of people who are going to be on the part pension, and that's the blue line, right? So, the number of people that are going to be on the full pension is the blue line. The number of people that are going to be part pension is on the black line. And the red line is what is actually happening to the pension as a proportion of GDP. See, the percentage of people eligible for the pension, it's just coming down and down and down and down as we head towards 2038. So that shows you, now that's data is from Rice Warner. So that is actually showing you that what we're witnessing here is a discussion that's not based on fact. And I always find it interesting that if a government doesn't have the facts correct, where are they getting these ideas from? I mean, the idea of the economic time bomb, you've just seen the fuse is actually being put out as it goes down. So that economic time bomb's not there. Now, the person who raised this, I reckon, 6 months ago was Paul Keating. Paul Keating said that we have one of the lowest rates of percentage of GDP to pay the pension of any country in the OECD. So in other words, Australia does not have that problem. So why are we talking about this? Well, partially we're talking about this because the government looks at that area and says this is a large area that we need to fund. Fair enough. But don't blame the pension for that particular reason, because the pension is not going to be a bigger problem going forward.
But do you think we'll see an age increase?
I don't think we'll see an age increase because at the moment we've got the situation of 67 being the age. Now, I'll tell you something else. When you hear about this business about Australians are living longer and healthier and better, that is also a myth as well. Australians are living longer with chronic disease, and the wonderful demographer Graham Hugo wrote a report on the age of baby boomers, and what we're finding is that they have more illness. Now, that's another issue that should be addressed, but guess what? The people that live the longest are the people that often have the highest educational backgrounds, and they live in the better suburbs. The people that live the shortest in our society are the people that are doing the hard manual work, and they're breathing in dust every day. They're working in dirty conditions. We've just seen recently a whole lot of people who are developing lung complaints from using manufactured stone in kitchens and bathrooms. I mean, we saw that recently. That's the new asbestos, if you like. So it's not an easy picture to actually look at, but the people that traditionally would have gone on the pension, a lot of those people are dying earlier now. They're not living longer. And the people that are self-funded retirees, they're the ones that are living longer because they've been in public service jobs, etc. The Bob Hawkes of the world, you know, who've got their pensions and that, they live to be almost 90. I mean, they're the people that don't have to worry about that. I mean, a lot of these politicians at the moment are getting 15% superannuation, and even if you just do 2 terms in the Senate, you'll be set for life. So, I mean, let's just look at the facts. The facts are Australia has got an older population, but is that older population a drain on their community? I don't think so. And I'll tell you something else just quickly before we go, and that is the number of older Australians that are caring for their partners, caring for their relatives, and they are doing that unpaid. They don't go down to Centrelink to get a carer's allowance, they just do it. let's recognise that older Australians are an asset. They're not a liability. Let's address ageism. I think the Treasurer was unintended in doing this and probably ill-advised from Treasury about the figures on the pension. So I think we should just move forward and now address the issue of how we can make sure that older Australians are valued, how we can make sure that older Australians can not be bounced out of jobs, and we should not be getting rid of people in their 40s and 50s and certainly not in their 60s before they retire.
Yeah, well, certainly some long conversations ahead on that debate, and also a good conversation needs to be had about the language that we're using about that debate with older Australians. Thank you for your time this afternoon, Ian.
A pleasure as always, Charlotte. Thank you.